Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2019 Peace to Prosperity Workshop. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the Senior Advisor to the President of the United States, Jared Kushner.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone for being here. Before I begin, I want to thank our gracious hosts, His Majesty King Hamad, His Royal Highness Prince Salman, and His Excellency Sheikh Salman. I want to thank the Kingdom of Bahrain and the people of Bahrain for being such gracious hosts. When I came and visited with you and your father about a couple months ago in February and presented to him the way we were thinking about solving this conflict and the vision, he said, "This is great, this is exactly the thinking that we need in this region," and asked that we come back here and try to assemble a bunch of leaders to talk this through and to start framing it. And we've been very, very overwhelmed by the reaction we've received. So I really want to thank you, Your Highness. I also want to thank President Trump for his vision and leadership and commitment to bringing peace to the Middle East and also to throughout the entire world. I want to thank Secretary Mnuchin for leading President Trump's delegation to this workshop and for all the amazing work that you and your team have done to help us make this a reality. I also want to thank everyone for joining us here today. The people in this room are not people who shy away from hard problems, and everyone here would like to see us bring an end to this Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The fact that so many global leaders and experts on investment came from all around the world shows that there is a serious interest, appetite, and willingness by the global community to help the Palestinian people if the right context can be created. For too long, the Palestinian people have been trapped in an inefficient framework of the past. The Peace to Prosperity vision is a modern framework for a brighter and more prosperous future. It is a vision of what is possible with peace. The conventional wisdom about the fate of the Palestinians is remarkably consistent. In meeting after meeting and conference after conference, I hear the same broken record of negativity about why progress is not possible. When I ask my counterparts why they continue to repeat these same tired talking points, despite no evidence that they lead to progress, they say, "Well, we've always said these things, and we've always done things this way." While politicians pay lip service, the world moves forward, and the Palestinian people continue to be left behind. We all agree on the following goals. We want to see peace, security, and prosperity for Palestinians, Israelis, and everyone else throughout the world. We want the freedom for people to worship without persecution. We want people to live together with dignity and respect, and we want to create better lives for their children and for future generations. We do not need to spend a lot of time discussing how we got here. We all know how we got here. Over the past decades, there have been many stops and starts in the Palestinian economy. Numerous well-intended programs, investments, and plans have been derailed by violence, political instability, and the lack of a resolution to the long-standing core issues of this conflict. To be clear, economic growth and prosperity for the Palestinian people are not possible without an enduring and fair political solution to the conflict, one that guarantees Israel's security and respects the dignity of the Palestinian people. However, today is not about the political issues. We'll get to those at the right time. The goal of this workshop is to begin thinking about these challenges in a new way. Let's try to view this conflict and the potential of the entire region through a different lens and work together to develop a concrete plan to try and achieve it. For a moment, imagine a new reality in the Middle East. Imagine a bustling commercial and tourist center in Gaza and the West Bank where international businesses come together and thrive. Imagine the West Bank as a blossoming economy full of entrepreneurs, engineers, scientists, and business leaders. Imagine people and goods flowing quickly and securely throughout the region as economics become more integrated and people become more prosperous. This isn't a stretch. This is actually the historical legacy of the Middle East, specifically of Gaza and the West Bank. It is a legacy of great cultures coming together as a center of commerce, innovation, and prosperity. At its apex, the commercial traffic on the desert routes through Arabia, culminating in Gaza, was so dense that historians compared it to an army on the march. But in recent years, for much of the Middle East, and longer for the Palestinians, the only armies on the march have been armies. But in recent years, instead of building on a history of innovation and entrepreneurship, the Palestinians became the highest per capita donor aid recipients in the world with no plan and no end in sight. I might be in the minority, but I believe that this can change. President Trump ran on a very straightforward platform to keep people safe and to create the opportunity for prosperity in America and throughout the world. The last 2 years have been a lot of hard work, but by implementing his policies, President Trump has created the best economy that America has seen in a very long time, perhaps even the best we've ever had. Prosperity is not something that is given to people. Prosperity is something that is earned with smart planning, determination, and fortitude. The Palestinian people have these qualities: intelligence, strength, perseverance, courage, and great supply. Let's harness these strengths and create the opportunity for them to succeed. My direct message to the Palestinian people is that despite what those who have let you down in the past tell you, President Trump and America have not given up on you. This workshop is for you. The vision we developed and released, if executed correctly, will lead to a better future for the Palestinian people, a future of dignity, prosperity, and opportunity. You can change your course for the positive if we are willing to try new things and think outside of the traditional box. Peace can only be achieved if it comes with a pathway for people to improve their lives. One who is more hopeful and sees opportunity for his or her family will put energy into pursuing opportunity instead of blaming others for their current misfortune. That is why agreeing on an economic pathway forward is a necessary precondition to resolving what is a previously unsolvable political situation. Enormous amounts of money have been wasted on corruption, munitions, and conflict in this region. Imagine if that money was invested in infrastructure, education, workforce training, and healthcare. When we reached out to one Middle Eastern investment fund to attend this workshop, they politely replied that they didn't think they should attend because they don't invest in this region. That was exactly our point. We want people to be thinking about how we can create the condition to invest in this region. We need to bring change so that this region can become investable and as a center of opportunity, as opposed to an area that is written off and overlooked. So how do we begin to make this change? We need the right plan, and we need to create the right environment. While we endeavored to create the framework, the hope from this workshop is that we will be able to freely and constructively discuss the different ideas, get peer feedback, modify, and then ultimately finalize a vision as a globally supported plan. We are joined here today by representatives from the world's leading institutions. We're very fortunate to have with us the president of the World Bank, David Malpass. We're very fortunate to have the chairman of the IMF, Christine Lagarde. Major donor countries, the largest companies, investment funds from all over the world, builders, innovators, job creators, capital allocators, and you'll be hearing from a lot of them over the next couple of days. I want to thank you all for being here and for expressing an interest in using your knowledge and capital, not just to create returns, but also to drive change in the real world for real people. This group has the ability to work together to create a historic opportunity for the Palestinian people and the people of this region. Some people have mockingly called this effort the deal of the century, but at its core, it is not just about making a deal. In fact, this effort is better referred to as the opportunity of the century, if leadership has the courage to pursue it. This is about creating opportunity for the Palestinian people. This is about creating opportunity for the people throughout the Middle East. If implemented correctly and competently, the economic plan I will go through now will lead to growth and better lives. To create this vision, we have drawn from the lessons of the most successful economic transformations of the last 75 years. We studied, along with the world's leading experts and thinkers and economists, Singapore, South Korea, Japan, Peru, Poland, China, and America. We took the elements that we thought could apply, and we tried to avoid the areas where we've seen mistakes and other attempts that people took over the years to try to implement these reforms. What we have developed is the most comprehensive economic plan that has ever been created specifically for the Palestinians and for the broader Middle East. We can turn this region from a victim of past conflicts into a model for commerce advancement throughout the world. Over the next 2 days, I want us all to keep in mind the following question. Should we find reason to stay with the status quo, a broken system that favors few at the expense of many, or should we push together to find new solutions and fight for a brighter future filled with opportunity and hope? I know which one I want to choose. I appreciate you all embracing this challenge with me. The United States and President Trump are committed to finding a better future for the Palestinians, for the Israelis, and for the entire Middle East. By working together, we can reach our ultimate goal, which is a real peace that leads to prosperity. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm now going to transition over to the presentation. We released the plan, I guess, 3 days ago, and I'm sure everyone here has read all 140 pages of what we put together, every line item, but I'll give you just a quick summary of what we did. So we put together the plan based on 3 pillars. The first pillar is to unleash the economic potential of the Palestinian people and of the region, to empower the people, and then to enhance the Palestinian governments. You can't do one without the other 2, and you need to be doing all 3 at the same time in order to make this work. So if we implement this program, this is a very specifically designed program. We go down to the different projects. We've built it based on a lot of the work that's been done in the past. We believe over time that we can double the GDP of the Palestinians. We can create over 1 million new jobs. We can reduce the unemployment rate to single digits, and we can reduce the poverty rate by 50%. This is not an easy thing to do, but it's something that can be implemented. We've had this peer-reviewed extensively, and we have invited everyone here and everyone throughout the world. We've released this publicly to give us their thoughts and feedback. So since I know a lot of people here like to start with the numbers, we go with a program that's about a $50 billion program. This comes from grants, which is about $13 billion. This is all done over 10 years. Then we do subsidized loans, about $25 billion, and we have the private capital, about $11 billion. If you notice, the early years were heavy on the grants and figuring out how to get the subsidized loans more and over time, because we're trying to create the necessary conditions for people to be able to make this area investable. Right now, there's not a lot of private capital. There's not a lot of subsidized loans coming into this area because you're in a position where there's not the basic infrastructure necessary, and you also don't have the rules-based system that's necessary for people to invest. You know, an example is a lot of the leading Palestinian business people who we speak to wanted to be here tonight. They were told by the authority not to come, and because they rely on them for their livelihood, it's not a free market where they can make those distinctions. So the first part, which is unleashing the economic potential, basically has 4 elements. Number 1 is constructing the essential infrastructure, which is necessary for businesses to work. Number 2 is opening up the West Bank and Gaza. Right now, they're very isolated enclaves. You have a lot of fear of terror. There's not a great amount of security. And because of that, the security's become very tight around the borders. Because of the tight security, I was talking to one developer, you can't get concrete in, you can't get a lot of goods in, and that makes the cost of living there much more expensive. Again, if we have a real peace and there's not a fear of people doing terrorism, then all of a sudden we can really thin the borders and allow for a much faster flow of goods and people. Promoting private sector growth, a lot of the historical aid that's been done here has been done to the government, and that hasn't necessarily created a private sector. We want to make sure that the private sector is empowered so that the wealth can really be distributed amongst the people, because that has not been the case to date. Then obviously strengthening the regional development and the integration with the neighbors. So we broke each of these things down into different categories, and we have, obviously the foundational things we need to do. We have the infrastructure, the roads and rails, the border crossing, the power, the water and wastewater, digital services, and then we went industry by industry for where we thought that the Palestinians could have a strategic advantage. I'm not going to highlight all of those. If you go online and you look at the plan we put out, we actually have a detailed business plan for how do you do each of these things individually, but I'll just focus maybe on the power to show you what we did. If you go to the West Bank and Gaza, right now the West Bank gets about 99% of their electricity from outside. so that they're not really power independent. You have the ability to develop an ecosystem. They don't have the ability to do power generation. If you go in Gaza, they have one diesel plant, which right now doesn't even have the ability to get in the goods that it needs to operate. This would be about building new power infrastructure. We would convert the diesel plants to natural gas. We'd figure out how to get pipelines to get the necessary gas in, and we would figure out how to make them much more self-reliant. We'd also build out the power grid. Now, again, a lot of these investments people are unwilling to make because people don't want to put good money after bad money. They've seen in the past, they've made these investments, they've tried to help out the Palestinian people, and then all of a sudden, there's some conflict that breaks out, and a lot of this infrastructure gets destroyed. So what we have here is very detailed plans, and these are things that we can phase in over time, assuming there is a real ceasefire or a real peace, and there's the opportunity for people to start making these investments. So the next one is empowering the people. Having great infrastructure doesn't matter as much if you don't have the people to do the jobs. We want to be matching the people with the jobs that are available today and the jobs that will be available in the future. So the Palestinian people, as you'll hear from one of the speakers tomorrow, have one of the highest literacy rates in the world. That's due to a lot of the aid that's been done over the years, which has been good. But we want to enhance the education services to teach them a lot more skill-based training that will help them have better careers and better jobs. A lot of the employers in the region are actually not able to find the qualified workforce that they're seeking to do the jobs and investments that they want to make. So we want to strengthen workforce development, invest in healthcare, and then also improve the quality of life. That's part of the plan. So again, these are the three components. And I'll focus right now just on the educational quality. But each of these elements, if you go into the website, which is on the bottom, you'll be able to see that we have a very detailed plan built out for each one. But you have to do all of these things at the same time. You need STEM education. We focus on youth and women, workforce training. But I'll focus just on the educational quality. These are the different programs we've identified and the investments needed in order to help them catapult to a next level so that they can have a skilled workforce that's qualified to take on the jobs that will be created from all this investment. The third pillar is enhancing the Palestinian governance. Tomorrow we'll be talking a little bit about property rights, which is a very essential component for people being able to get loans, for people being able to have investments, but we need a better business environment. And people are very quick in the Middle East. For the last 70 years, the unifying feature has been to blame Israel for a lot of people's problems. But a lot of the problems really should be looking at governance and the fact that leaders have often deflected blame on Israel for a lot of the own shortcomings from within the countries. If we can create a better business environment there, it will make it investable. So there's two major components that need to happen if people want to see better lives. We need to figure out how do we make it a safe environment. Then we can actually have people willing to invest, goods going in, people flowing in and out. And then we need an environment where people know that if they're investing, then there won't be as much corruption. The money actually can trickle down to the people. And when people have property rights, then it actually works that way. And we'll talk about that more extensively tomorrow. One thing that I get asked a lot from people when I share this program with them is they say, well, okay, who's going to implement this, right? We haven't seen a lot of ability to implement something like this, and this is a major scale program. That's something we've studied very, very carefully. And if you look at the last 25 years, we have some very good examples, not just here, but in other places of where big programs have worked and been implemented. We've studied those, and we've tried to create a mechanism that's in line with those. And then we've also had 25 years of experience to see how money can be wasted, stolen, all different kinds of bad things, which we do not want to see happen. So we've envisioned creating a master fund that then can govern this, and we would release it in tranches. One of the things I like to say, maybe this is from my previous life in business as opposed to being in government, is we like to reward results. We don't like to reward efforts. And I think that that's a very important component. So what we would envision is that we would get commitments for this. We would make it in tranches. Then as you achieve different milestones of reform, then the next tranches will be released. This is one slide that I actually thought was very interesting, which shows that we're actually starting from a pretty strong place relative to peers. When I show this to people, they're actually quite surprised. If you go on the right side, you'll see that you have the West Bank and Gaza with a GDP per capita of about $3,000 per person. If you go to the West Bank, which is more governed right now, you have about $3,800 per capita. If you compare that to Egypt, it's $2,500, Jordan's $4,000, Lebanon's $8,500, Morocco's $3,000, and Tunisia's $3,500. If you go to debt to GDP, you have Egypt at 100%, Jordan at 94%, West Bank and Gaza are at less than half of that. So starting from a relatively strong place, that if we can start doing these investments, create a peace environment, create a good security apparatus, there is a ton of potential for people to really start rising in a very, very quick way. Finally, We constructed this in a way where we thought we can't just try to stimulate Gaza and the West Bank. Obviously we want to create a very prosperous global regional environment. Israel has a thriving economy. Imagine if Silicon Valley was cut off from the rest of California. That's kind of what we have right now in the Middle East. So obviously some form of peace would create prosperity, I think, for Israel, but also for everyone else throughout the region. But what we did is we put the majority of the projects in Gaza and the West Bank, but then we also figured out what projects can we do in Jordan, Egypt, and Lebanon to also figure out how to get those economies to start rising and better integrated as well. So we see tremendous potential. Again, people on this file try to be very skeptical. If you want me to come up with the reasons why this is hard, I can probably give you a longer list of reasons than anybody else. But again, our goal has been to try to come up with what is the best pathway forward? How can we break this deadlock that's been here for too long, and how can we focus on helping people make their lives? And that really is what, when President Trump comes to the office every day, he's focused on the American people. How can he help the American people improve their lives? And we took the same approach with the Israelis and the Palestinian people. The politicians tend to talk about political things. What we tried to focus on are what are the things that will help people live better lives, help their families have better futures, help them pay their mortgages, help them be better providers. And we think that this plan can really accomplish that. So last slide is just showing you the breakdown in all the different industries. Again, all this detail is on the website, and I want people to review it very carefully. But it shows that the money that we'd be investing is fairly well distributed. Obviously, transportation, mobility, infrastructure with power and water, digital services, those are about half of it, and that's very, very critical. There's still government support. Right now, the government runs a deficit, but over time, they should be able to raise their tax base to be self-sustaining. And then education, tourism, natural resources, healthcare, home ownership, agriculture, manufacturing, quality of life. These are all components that you have to do at the same time. So I just want to thank everyone on the team who helped make this possible. I think that it's a very good first step. I do hope that the Palestinian people will take a look. I hope that we'll all be able to come together and try to come up with the best framework and put together this package and hopefully use this as a way to change the course of history in this region. So I just want to thank all of you. This is not a conference where people are coming to benefit for themselves. You all have big responsibilities in a lot of places you can be, and the fact that you're showing up to do this shows that you care about the region, you care about doing good in the world, and you care about both the Israeli and the Palestinian people. So really thank you for taking the time out of your lives to come and be a part of this and to provide your feedback, and hopefully this will help us make a big step forward. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Professor, author, and broadcaster Nick Gowing.
Well, let me welcome you all as well. And I'm going to continue the spirit of Mr. Kushner, the spirit of trying to engage. And let me tell you what the aim of the next day and a half is. It's simple. What we're trying to do is create a basis and a foundation for discussion. There's really no grander intention than that. After all, there are many opportunities. Now they've got to be realized. But how long will it take? But what can we put now on the table? I'm going to be joined shortly by two leading businessmen to share their thoughts about what is possible and what can move forward. But this is about an exploration, and it is about an exploration of where things can go, assuming there is peace or at least stability in this region. When will that happen? Who knows when it'll happen. Gaining a better understanding of what possibilities there are for the Palestinians, for the Lebanese, for the Jordanians, and for the Egyptians as well. Improving the quality of life through investment and infrastructure as well, not just aid. 179 projects already detailed in this big program that we're here to consider. Issues of regional integration, issues of connecting people, of commerce and trade, the kind of things which are stifled at the moment. And the ask for you is simply to be positive, to share thoughts in a positive spirit. This is very much an economic discussion. It's not a political discussion. It's not about Jerusalem. It's not about peace. It is about what can happen when there's stability in the region. And I'm here in an independent capacity, along with other moderators, to try and make sure we can frame an understanding of what is possible in the spirit of what we've just heard from Mr. Kushner, so you can frame your assessments and test the viability of the economic plan and the options. And it is an economic plan only. There is expected to be some kind of political plan in a few months' time. So let me now invite our two first guests to discuss building a coalition for Middle East prosperity. The time is now. Let me ask Mohammed Alabar and also Steve Schwartzman to come to the platform. Welcome to you both. You're all both well known here in the region and globally as well, but what we want to do in the next half hour is explore how you as business people, leading business people, view the potential now and what you're going to invest in or what you might invest in or why you won't invest at all. But let me ask the question which we need to ask first of all. What's your reflection, Steve Schwartzman, of the fact that the Palestinian Authority chose not to be here?
Well, I'm not a political person, I'm just a business person. And I just listened to Jared's presentation, which was pretty remarkable. The idea that someone would take so much time and prepare something in such depth says something quite serious about the purpose of the United States and also Jared as a person. And I look at this kind of presentation as something that an economic planner would look at and say, this could happen with the right circumstances. It won't with the wrong circumstances. But everyone needs a dream. And this is a very sensible type of dream. And one would have hoped that the beneficiaries of that dream might have been here. On the other hand, this has been 72 years, roughly, of complexity in this part of the world, and things don't change overnight. But to make change, you need to have a vision. And thinking about this, all 140 pages of it, which I actually read twice because I knew I'd be sitting up here.
Should I just show how big it is?
Yes, and it's got all kinds of supporting stuff. That to make a dream come true for mothers in Palestine who want better outcomes for their daughters and sons and fathers, who want to provide better for their families is normal, and it can happen. But as I think about, these other places where things have occurred, this whole region has exploded with growth since I've been coming here for 30 years. A lot of it powered by natural resources and the cleverness of the people. In Gaza and the West Bank, there are no natural resources. But there were no particular natural resources in Singapore. It's just a small island. It's got nothing. It's flat. But what it had was inspirational leadership. Lee Kuan Yew is one of the most unique people in the world. A country like Dubai, which lacked the resources of its neighbors with large-scale resources, has made an enormous success. And all of that can happen. And this is like a first step, but it's a vision that I think should be accepted for a better life, and people will hear about this.
Let's talk about specifics in a moment. Mohammed Alaba, the fact that the Palestinian Authority has decided not to be represented here.
Well, the way I feel, and I think many of my colleagues in the audience feel as Arabs, the issue of the Palestinian and what projects you might do, large or small, is something that's very close to our hearts. Every Arab. I really believe, of course, it would have been amazing to have everybody in one room. But every one of us, we are really Palestinian at heart, because it is, the Palestinian issue is our issue. So unfortunately, they are not here. They've been amazing to have them, but I feel like I represent them, because it is my story. Palestine and its people and the Palestinian issues is something that's close to my heart. So I think today we really represent them in whatever needs to be done. And then again, many people ask me, and I say, all of us in this region, we're really people of hope, and we're a very optimistic bunch. We live in a very harsh environment, if it's really the desert or if it's the political scene in the region, and we get up every morning and we're positive and we want to do more. And you know what? It happens. It happens. So I'm saying it's unfortunate, but I think it's our duty to prove to them that there's something that's very serious, there's good people behind this, and it has a good purpose.
All right, now let's get into the detail. Peace to Prosperity talks about envisioning extraordinary private sector investment in entrepreneurship, small business, tourism, and so on. It's a very long list. For you as investors, what do you need to be sure that you can put money in, it can be safe, and it can develop in the way that we've heard from the plan?
Well, you need a rule of law. That's very simple. We can't invest places where you don't have predictability of enforcement, courts, the normal kind of infrastructure you would expect, and that's a sine qua non where we go.
And your assessment now of what you see?
I wouldn't think that would be a reliable place to invest. Just by the way, this plan is not that financially ambitious. It's got $27 billion, for the Palestinians, and it's only about 20% equity. So it's not that much. It's like $5.5 billion. We've put at Blackstone more than $5.5 billion in a single investment, and this is for remaking a region. So I don't think that Jared has put together something that is unachievable and really requires enormous amounts of commercial support.
Mohammed, you are investing an enormous amount in this region, taking risks. What kind of risk do you assess there is currently in Gaza and the West Bank?
Well, of course, I'm a big investor with my group in Egypt, in Jordan, in Lebanon, and all these countries for the past 12 years. Now, if you want to talk about risk, as Jared said, there is no end to it. Risk and hard work and pain, which is continuous, but that's the business we're in. So if you tell me, and plus I'm from the Middle East, I'll come back and say, and many of my colleagues, they know that this is the region, but we know it better. It's easier for us to do business here rather than Southern California, where I get my master planning approved in 6 years, and I get it approved in Lebanon and in Jordan and in Egypt in 3 months. So if you, in fact, I almost started a huge project in Toronto, and then acquiring the land. It's the land that Google is doing work on now. They told me that you need to go through 7 years of planning. I said, listen, at that time I was 50. By the time I get to build anything, I'll be 57. This is no deal. So actually we left to close our office and we're gone while we are making a lot of money out of the Middle East. So I'm saying that it is really easy to do business in the Middle East. But it's hard work. Of course it's hard work.
And your assessment of the risk, though?
Well, what about the return? I don't want to do business in London where my return is, 4.5%. That's I'm out of business. I'm looking at environment where I'm making 25%, 35%, sometimes 50. I mean, certain areas I make 55% in the Middle East. Now, as I said, it's a lot of work, flying in and out. You have to know the mayor of this city, the mayor of that city, the mayor of Tangier. But it's doable and great opportunities. And remember, these are so-called developed economies, developed. They have not developed yet, so they need more of everything.
Now, we want to get by in the next 20 minutes to the point where we can work out whether the plan is achievable. An achievable plan is what it says about itself. The vision is within reach, but there are some specifics here. Look at the kind of language. Empower. The potential is blurred, and I'm quoting from the document here, by the absence of continuous sustainable peace and enhanced governance as well. Do you think the potential for that alone will in its own way create a new form of stability? Maybe not peace as such, but stability, which improves the investment climate.
What we find from investing all around the world is that great governments tend to have great countries and make it really the kind of place where you'd want to invest. And I think that's a challenge, not for the region, but for the Palestinian areas.
But one of the phrases here is the power to unlock from investment. Do you believe that is the case and could be and would be the case here?
Well, it's a little bit of we call it in English a chicken and egg. And I think you need both.
Unlock potential, Mohammed.
I think you need them both, but if you could give me a good environment where I can operate in, there's no limit what can be done, because with that good environment to operate in, you will automatically do business, you create employment, you create better life for people, people are optimistic, people are positive, and after that, it just rolls. Because there's a lot of other people who will be following us as we really put in the investment and it works. You create great environment, optimism, and everybody's positive about what we do. But you have to have these prerequisites.
So you're saying there is good justification for believing there's a causal effect between investment and creating a new environment where there can be greater stability, because that's an important thing to have clear right from the beginning. You're one of the biggest investors based in the United States, one of the top 5 companies.
Yeah, well, you have to have those preconditions of rule of law and the ability to trust what people tell you. It's the same all over the world, and it's not controversial. You have to deliver that. And if you don't deliver that, you can't attract large-scale capital. You can't attract institutional capital, which we mostly manage, and even brilliant, I would say, entrepreneurs like Mohammed would be reluctant to go to a place like that. And these are things that either get solved or they don't. The people have to want those kinds of outcomes because it gets them something. The plan gets them a better life, and they're going to have to deliver a mechanism to create confidence for outsiders.
Mohammed, with those you're dealing with and those you would like to deal with, do you believe there's an understanding and acceptance of this causal relationship between investment and the potential, which is far greater than we have at the moment?
I think everyone our group invests with, we're across 17 countries. They all believe in that, and they've seen it working as well. But again, it must be the right environment for really to come in, and then people will follow. But if I might say one thing, that we as Arabs, you have to know one thing about us, is that the most brilliant minds are the Palestinian minds. And for me, if you have a brilliant mind, you solve 90% of your problem. So let's enable them and let's motivate them the right way, because we've got good material to play with and to work with.
Do you think this kind of a discussion, even though there are those who are not here, in its own way can act as an inspiration to overcome the enormous legacy of geopolitical realities at the moment?
I think for us to get together and get people in the room, that's just an amazing opportunity. I guess maybe I'm just a positive human being like many of these people who come here, but that's the business. That's why we wake up every morning. So it's the beginning of something that I'm sure will get us somewhere. And I know that there's serious people in this room behind this gathering.
Geopolitical realities.
So an area with 30% unemployment is not really sustainable as an appropriate place to live. And it's hard to know what breaks an impasse, but if you have a vision that you don't have to have 30% unemployment, you don't have to have huge amounts of deaths on birth and all kinds of other issues. It seems to me logical, though the situation may not be logical, seems to me logical that over time people are going to respond to a better life. Who would not want a better life? I mean, whether it's the World Bank or other people in the room, as well as some of the great sovereigns, spend their lives making better lives for their people.
That's key. I like that. I like better life.
This area should at some point, now I'm not a political expert to know when that point's going to be, but at some point people should respond to that.
I'd like you to tell the story of what you've seen elsewhere, because what I find, certainly in my work, is that it's case studies, it's examples which can really inspire, as opposed to just numbers on a spreadsheet, particularly your example from Serbia. And after all, 25, 30 years ago, that was a region at war. Yes. It was devastated. I was there for 5 years. And the stories you're telling me now about the kind of dramatic change which can happen based on investment.
And imagine, at the time we took the green light to invest, GDP was -1. But all railroad station, 200 acres on the river was unbelievable. I was emotional about real estate, emotional about human life. But by the time we cleaned the river, while we're doing the master plan, we cleaned the river. We put a bicycle path. We put walking path, landscape, and we dropped containers in for quick F&B. That's all we did at the beginning, because we're busy doing the master plan. And you see people walking, and you say, something is happening. And people still don't believe, because, don't believe that this project will happen. By the time we delivered the first buildings, still people said, maybe these people are serious. After 5 years. So I think all of us, we have to be realistic. It takes time. And today, of course, doing well. But what's amazing is that people automatically moved with us. They are positive. They're running around with their kids. They're smiling. 50% of our business is the 4 million Serbian overseas putting their money back in their country while we're doing business in there. Number of investors who followed us when we announced our $2 billion investment and we start hitting the ground, the number of people who followed to come with us. That's why Belgrade every year gets about 45% increase in tourism year on year for the past 4 years. So, as you rightly said, people want a decent life. They just want to participate in something good. But the issue with the Middle East, which is much better than Serbia, is that the Middle East is 60-70% are young people. They're looking at their screens. They want to be part of this. I don't think they're involved in politics. They want a better life. That's why I'm optimistic about the gathering. the young people in the region and what they are asking for.
And much of that will come out in the discussions tomorrow. But when you look at that video, which is only 2 minutes, but a lot of transition taking place, literally places which are seen as down,
Yes.
but suddenly being translated.
Amazing.
I picked up on that, having seen it before you mentioned to me about Serbia, because of what you've just said about what can be achieved
No, in
and the
Egypt-
dramatic impact.
But look at North Egypt. We're lucky enough. We have a 60 million square feet site, and we've got one inside Cairo. If you go into their sites and you say, is this Beverly Hills or is this Cairo? But look at the people on the street. Look at their faces. Look at the smile, their pride. They have something to lose. Something to lose, very important for all of us, right? We have a stake in this. And other people follow, investors follow, other good people follow. And I think, it's our duty also, it's not only the investment, but to promote the concept, to promote the purpose of what we are trying to do. Especially for us as Arab, the Palestinian issue is the core of, it's a part of our DNA.
The social catalyst there from investment, even though some are suspicious about what investment is about, that social catalyst, Steve, about what can be achieved by investment and the transition in the minds of people, particularly for the next generation who are hungry for opportunity.
Well, infrastructure is like a really important thing. We were involved in Uganda providing 40% of the electricity there through a hydro project. The ability to empower people by just having simple things we don't even think about. They're virtually invisible to us. That's where you start. Sort of like a great backbone for communications and internet and connecting people to the world. There are all kinds of ways that you start. We did some interesting things in Poland, probably around 15 years ago, where you could just see the people who wanted to have better lives, and they were quite focused on it. And no government is perfect, but from where they came from, it was exciting to watch that.
One of the extraordinary hopes on page 17, we believe we can achieve a World Bank rating of 75 or better. Do you believe that is possible? Because when I look at the kind of language which I see on page 4, and I'm going to quote here, a thriving and integrated economy, an empowered and prosperous people, an accountable and agile government. Easy to put that in, if you like, a proposal document. But do you believe something like that is really achievable?
Well, I wanted to say, before you ask me this question, I wanted to tell you that what made us really fly through some of these countries, and especially in Serbia, is that you should see how the government behaves. I mean, these people are like a driving one of those W12 machines. They're fast, they're efficient, they're clean. So I must say that not only we did a good job, but the government have done an amazing work to enable us to produce. So I would say it's doable if you've got a good partner and you've got people on the ground who are really serious. And I always vote for young government boys and girls to run the show and really from the heart. Of
Is
course,
age important in this?
I like age because I run a very large, with my colleagues, an e-commerce company that do amazing stuff in the region, and they amaze me every single morning. So yes, young people, they're educated, they're smarter than one of us. That's why I always travel with my son, because I always need advice and I lean on him.
Well, I'll wait for the next question.
But thriving integrated economy, empowered, prosperous people, accountable, agile government. These are very sound aspirational words.
Well, but that's what you need everywhere in the world. For example, even a place like New York, with a mayor like Mike Bloomberg, and you're still seeing what he's created with new universities, buildings going up all over, reinvigoration of the city, one person. So when I said earlier that one person is needed to drive this kind of reimagination of a country, of a region. One person can do it. There are people in this region itself, in the Middle East, the heads of a lot of the countries are driving to make their countries better, a better life for people. And everybody here knows, what's going on in that regard. And it's that drive that creates these big buildings and sort of museums and all kinds of remarkable things that have happened. I mean, since I've been coming here, it's only been 30 years, I guess, a little less than 30. Riyadh has grown 7 times. I mean, people think it's just there. It's 7 times. What kind of place grows 7 times? That's sort of, people think it's been there for thousands of years. And you can do this with each country providing unique leadership, which they do in this region. It's very dynamic here, and there's no reason why that should not carry over.
Now, there's a particular point here on page 8 about how you don't need a Marshall Fund for this kind of thing to happen. You need investing. You need private investment. And indeed, much of the investment, as we heard from Mr. Kushner earlier, is going to be significantly less than the amount of aid that's spent at the moment. Is that a good principle in your view, that it doesn't require that kind of level of, like the Marshall Fund after World War II?
It's 20% equity. It's not that much money. I mean,
Totally.
I hate to say things like that. They
Totally
get
agree.
recorded and somebody says, well, seems like a lot of money to me as a person, which it is as a person. But taken in the context of a global economy, 27 billion and, putting up $5 to $5.5 billion is that's a good sized project that you'd be financing at the World Bank. It's not that much money. And that's what surprised me about the plan. There's so many applications of those funds because you've got 80%, sort of soft money on top of it. And you can because the base is so low, there you can really, put a lot of things in as Jared's plan shows. So this type of transformation is financially doable. It's a question of whether there's will to do it.
We've got 5 minutes left. Let me challenge you now. What can fly fast? What could move quickly if suddenly there was a significant breakthrough, allowing these kind of opportunities to emerge? How quickly do you believe that the private sector could act in a way which probably governments can't?
Myself, if we get a green light, we get people who are really facilitating the whole process, I think you'll be shocked of the amount of interest and amount of money beside the numbers we were talking about. Because, as I said, as an Arab, I know that every single Arab want to contribute and want to support. So it will really fly fast, but provide a good organized structure. Whatever that structure is that it's agreed on between all the parties, I'm telling you, 400 million Arabs, there's a lot of them who want to participate.
Steve, the speed at which this could be done.
I think there's a proof of concept needed. You'd first have, the inspirational entrepreneurs like Mohammed. You would need, disproportionate money and guarantees, from the World Bank or IMF. People would, I think, at least from the West, be very cautious at the beginning. And as they see it roll out, they'd come in if the return is there. And the safety. First, it would be safety. You'd have to have somebody underwriting this risk, who of course thinks there's not much risk. Otherwise, they wouldn't underwrite it.
What about two or three practical problems at the moment? The fact that it's the mobility between Gaza and the West Bank is very limited. Getting material into Gaza is particularly almost impossible for most people, as you've discovered. What about the need for that to be overcome very speedily? And secondly, what is mentioned here in the document about creating growth opportunities by improving access to strong neighboring economies. Strong neighboring economies, still that obstruction, that limitation, that friction that exists. How much would that be critical in making judgments as a businessman?
I think, unless I have the plan wrong, Jared, there's a road going between the two. This is what happens when you read 140 pages. And so that's a mechanism. And obviously, you know, it's really hard to have an economy that's completely bottled up. You know, economies like exports need imports. And so that would be over time, I think, something that would need to occur.
I mean, you'll have to do the link, which might take 2 years or 3 years, but I think immediately if the parties, they will have some type of an agreement, then you can just open up Gaza a little bit. If, you know, how you can open that, is that through a port, through Egypt, and once you open that up and you know you release the pressure from the West Bank while you are building infrastructure, you can still do work within these two territories ASAP.
But in your mind, are these significant constraints which would act as a kind of anchor chain?
Today, I mean, the infrastructure between the two locations, I don't think it's an issue today. I think opening up the territories for people to come in and for basically material to come in and out, or opening Gaza across to Egypt, for example. You know, 10 years ago, I did the first master plan on the waterfront of Gaza. You know, my engineers, they were sleeping on the border for 2 nights. Thank God they are Chinese, Singaporean crazy guys who can sleep 2 nights on the border to get in and do the master plan. But you need to facilitate all that while you're doing the infrastructure between the two parts.
Right. In the last minute, your idea of where the Palestinians could be at high speed, literally within a year or two, if suddenly things were to change dramatically based on the calculations you make as a leading investor?
I think the world would be overjoyed if things changed politically, and this issue could just simply be normalized like the other places where, you know, we for the most part operate, and so you'll need a political change, I think, to make that happen, to have that great inspirational leadership that brings along a population that logically should want a better life for their children.
Mohammed.
If there is a positive change, and again, positive change is a big word, I think you'll maybe I'm just too optimistic, but you'll really be surprised, because we're dealing with young people who really would like to be part of the good life, whatever that is. But I'm sure it's positive, and I think the velocity of change could surprise you.
Good. Well,
Positively.
Thank you both very much indeed. What we've done is we've opened the door to significant perceptions of what can happen if things move in the right direction. Let me tell you what's going to happen shortly. There'll be dinner. There'll be 2 dinners, one for the main guests and officials over the other side of the corridor here. And for the media, it'll be downstairs in the Kitchen Bay restaurant. Tomorrow morning, we have Madame Lagarde speaking on a panel in conversation with Tony Blair and Jared Kushner as well. A session moderated by Secretary Mnuchin as well, and Sheikh Salman, featuring all the ministers of finance who are here. But can I thank very much Steve Schwartzman and Mohammed Alabar.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.